We're holding that base, Amud base. Before we start, somebody you asked a question last week. What taka did the Yidden see in Beis Hamikdash? What did the Yidden see in Beis Hamikdash? Pass it around. I found here. There's a Maimah, the Rebbe. I'm looking at Maimah. I believe in a Chodesh Zelachem, and it mentions like on a fly. It mentions something on a fly. It just mentions something. So but the source of this the source of what it mentions there is in the Sefer Mod. It actually comes back from the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek mentions a whole long thing. Sorry, the Rebbe Marash. Or was it Tzemach Tzedek? I mean, a whole long thing, but the Friedrich Rebbe and the Rebbe did it very clear, very nice and simple and easy. The question was, what did the Yidden see in the Beis Hamikdash when they come to Beis Hamikdash? So in the Sikha, the Rebbe says very clearly, Tafke Bizman Abayis, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, in the Sikha and Eikef, it's in Chelik Tes, when the Lakus is given Begilui, Lakus was openly revealed, Lidois is given Riyas Lakus, there was simple seeing of godliness. The same way you came to see you came to be seen, you also see, which means you saw godliness clearly. So therefore the Rebbe says in the Sikha, a lot of beautiful things, but there was actual visual seeing. The Friedrich Rebbe paints a much better picture in a way. This is in Sefer Mam Tanfish Behei. So he says, in the Bizman Golos, where it's like the Eibush is sleeping, and the Yidden are sleeping. There's a light. There was a shining light of the Eibush. The Yidden were in a very elevated state. It says in Pasuk, 3 times a year, they would see the Eibush. They actually saw godliness. It doesn't say anywhere in Nigla anywhere. I mean, at least I don't know, but the Rebbeim write very clearly that when in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, especially the first Beis Hamikdash, I believe in the second Beis Hamikdash, they saw open, revealed godliness. And as a proof, there were 10 nisim that the Yidden had in Beis Hamikdash. There were many miracles that happened that you saw open godliness. The fact that there was enough room, the fact that when they bowed down, they had room, that the fire, the smoke went straight up. It wasn't. All these things showed that the Eden saw revealed godliness. So this is just as an answer to, you asked last week, what did actually Eden see? So I happened to see this week, so I felt we should share it. Okay, so we're holding Daf Beis Amud Beis. The last thing in Daf Beis Amud Beis we discussed was a slave, a goy that was bought as a slave, a non-Jew. There's a mitzvah of a slave. There's a mitzvah on a year that if you own a slave, it says in the Torah, "Le'olam behem tavodu," you have to enslave them forever. Chagigah Beis Hamikdash Beis. Le'olam behem tavodu, that you always have to enslave the people, your slaves that you have to keep them forever as slaves. That's a mitzvah's essay. If you let them go, you're oiven a mitzvah's loisaseh. Last week we spoke about if someone let his slave go, and he's a partner with another Yid, and they both own a slave, and he let his part go, and basically we came to a conclusion that he has to let the other owner has to let the slave go, because otherwise the slave would not be able to have any kids, because he cannot get married. So there's the entire page on Daf Beis Amud Beis in Tosfos discusses different options. Maybe you can marry this, maybe you can marry that. Most Tosfos is focused on that. So I'm not going to go through all Tosfos. I'm just as a point, I want to go through just piece by piece. The Gemara says a slave that's a half slave and a half free Jew, he cannot marry a Jewish woman because he has part of it as a slave. He cannot marry a slave, says Tosfos, another slave, because he has half that he is freed. He cannot marry a half. We discussed last week that that's a lady that was a maidservant and she was released, and now she's a half maidservant, half a regular person. She cannot do that because he wants to bring proof from a pilda, from a mule. A mule is half horse, half donkey, and a mule can only be mated together with the same type of animal, half horse, half donkey. So if that's okay, this should be okay. What was the problem with a mule? A mule is kilayim. You're not allowed to put together two animals that a third animal will come out. But if you already have an animal that's this way, to have them kids further, have them offspring further, you could do it with the similar type of animal. So a mule can put together with another mule. And so he wants to bring proof that an evet that's half released and half an evet should be done the same thing. You can put it together with a maidservant that is half a maidservant, half she's a free person. This says it's not a problem. It's not a. You can't do that because it's a big problem. Because over there we only worry about kilayim. There's no union of kilayim because it was already done. But here you're taking a woman that's half freed and you're putting it together with a slave that's half a slave. So that's a problem. The other things the Tessus mentions, an evet, a slave, can marry a mamza. There's a famous Gemara that discusses that a mamza, someone that was born as a mamza, how can he have offsprings that can go back to Yidden? It says mamza should never return back to Yidden. So the Gemara has a whole cheshbon how you can do that. He can marry a maidservant. The offspring is not his because it's part of the odin of the master. Then the master releases the kids and they become full Yidden. Like this, he can have kids that will basically even though he's a mamza, he can have kids that go back to the Yidden. So here's the same thing also. Let the half-slave, half-freed Yid, let him marry a mamzeres. So again, here you can't do that because you have half of a free person, and that half person cannot. The Tosfos brings two answers. Half-free person cannot marry a mamzeres. And another problem is that if the evet that's half an evet and half a free person marries a mamzeres, the offspring will be mamzerim because their offspring will be like their mother. So what's the point? You're going to allow him to marry mamzeres to bring more mamzerim in the world? That doesn't make sense. And there's a few more in Sina, but in every single one, Tosfos finds a reason why not. And Tosfos comes with a conclusion that the only thing that you can do is to release him. Now we have a essay that says, you have to keep this person enslaved forever. And here you're forcing the master to release him, and you're forcing him to be Oivel and Essay. You're forcing him to make an Aveil. So Tosfos explains. He's a Yid, no? So he's a half a Yid and half a slave. There's two owners. But it's by Goy, no? Right. So this Eved, the slave was a Goy. He became a slave. So now he is a Yid like a woman is a Yid, right? Like he has the mitzvahs of a woman. Sorry, women are Yidden. Take that back. I have to be very careful. I'm gonna have to. Yeah. He has the mitzvahs that of a woman. When he becomes released, he's a full, complete Yid. So now he's half released and half not. So he's half a complete Yid and half not. So now the half that he is not, the master, the one master that he has left, has a mitzvah le'olam tavodah, not to release him. And here where the Gemara says you have to force him. You're forcing him to be oiv and avel. So this says that the mitzvahs esse of loyle soya badad, that the Rebbe should not create the world for emptiness, but to fill up the world. That mitzvahs esse is stronger than the mitzvahs esse of le'olam tavodah. So there's a few different places that discuss different things. And now we're going to go back to our Gemara. Anyways, this is basically almost all the texts on this page. The Gemara discusses as well. The Gemara in the Mishnah we mentioned of the people that do not have a chiyuv, they're not obligated to go to the Beis Hamikdash on Yontif. They could still go and get a mitzvah. It won't be the same way as someone that has the mitzvah and goes and fulfills the mitzvah, but you could still go, but you're not obligated to go. Who are the ones that are not obligated to go? The Mishnah says one of the three people, Cheresh, שוטה, and Cotton. In many places, you will find these three always go hand in hand. Cheresh is someone that is not of a full sound of mind, is not fully there. Cheresh is a deaf mute. שוטה is someone that doesn't have full faculties. He doesn't have an understanding of what goes on. And a Cotton is a little child. We already said in the Mishnah that a Cotton here means someone that's very little. Once he is at an age that he can understand, he can walk himself from the entrance of Yerushalayim till the Beis Hamikdash, there is a mitzvah of chinuch to go up. But the Cheresh and the Cotton are always placed together as one lump, that these guys don't have a chiyuv in many mitzvahs. Now there is today, all these the chedesh and the shaita, it's very very difficult with the chedesh and the shaita, because today, in the olden days, when someone was deaf, mute, he couldn't hear, he couldn't speak, it was done with. Today, you have devices. Today, you have hearing aids. You have cochlear implants. You have all different types of things. You have ASL. You have American Sign Language. So there is in the last 50, 60 years, there was a lot of ink spilled with back and forth with Rabbanim exactly what makes someone a chedesh, and more than that, what makes someone a shaita. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but many years ago there was a class that was given at Yisrael. Something that I arranged with the shluchim. I work with shluchim with special needs, so I arranged a class with a Rav in Yisrael that has a few grandchildren with special needs, and he laid down a whole slew of a few concepts that you can test a child and say, okay, this guy is considered a shaita or not. From the things he mentioned there that he brought from different places in the Gemara, from the things he mentioned there, if you tell a child a concept and you ask him to repeat it, if he couldn't repeat it and understands it, even though he's not functioning 100%, he's not considered a shaita. One of the things was, back in the days, they had winter fruits and summer fruits. We have them today also, but we have all the fruits. It's just one is more expensive, one is less expensive. But in the days of old, in the winter you had certain fruits that didn't exist in the summer. So if you ask a child, what fruits can you eat in the winter, what fruits can you eat in the summer, if he knows to tell you that, he's not a shaita. There's a lot of different things that he brought down. You ask a child 3 questions in 3 different ways, yes and no. So in the summer, you would ask a child, is it cold today? He would tell you no. Then you ask him, is it hot today? He has to tell you yes. So he has to have both base. So basically, it brings a whole different thing. What exactly is a shaita? But in the days of old, a deaf mute, a shaita, someone that did not have a sound, sound of mind, he did not was not fully there, and a katan, someone that's very young, is considered they're only one thing. Why? Because she'ein bohen das. They don't have wisdom. They can't understand certain things. So like the Gemara, chedesh, they included a deaf mute, dumya the shaita v'katan. They put him together with the shaita v'katan. Technically, a deaf mute person can be fully there. We just don't know it because he can't speak. We don't know it because he can't hear. But technically, you're putting a person that could possibly be fully there together with a shaita that we know does not have a sound mind, and you're putting that with a katan that we know does not have the ability to differentiate between things and know what's good and what's wrong. The Gemara says that that's how we do it. Why? Mashet v'katan delav b'nedea, just like a shaita and a katan are people that don't have an update. What? Das. They don't have wisdom. They don't understand things. They cannot differentiate between things. Av chedesh lav badeyahu. Chedesh is also not a badeya. And again, in the olden days when we couldn't access the brain of a chedesh, we couldn't speak to him. So for us, it was someone that didn't have a day, didn't have wisdom. We didn't know what was going on. Today, it's very different. Today, even with
you could write something down. You can see.
But that, for some reason, did not show us.
And Frank, which is like first. And Frank was the one with she's.
No, not.
Not Frank. What is the age group?
Usually a katan is until bas mitzvah and a day, until bar mitzvah and a day. And even then, it depends on certain things. As they have to have 2 hair, they have 2 hair. But in our Mishnah, we already said a katan means someone that's very little. The katan that has a chiyuv is a bar bas mitzvah. But before that, there's a certain period of time where you would go to the Beis Hamikdash, even if you don't have a chiyuv, you go for chinuch. Anyway, so that's a chedesh shaita v'katan. The Gemara says all these three people, lav badea, they don't have das, they don't have knowledge, they don't have wisdom, and they cannot differentiate, and therefore all these 3 people cannot go up. Avchesh lav badeo. The Komashmalon, it's coming to teach us, kedetnan, like we learned in a different Mishnah, what kind of chedesh are we talking about? Usually chedesh means someone that can't hear. In this Mishnah, we're talking about chedesh shedibu chacham b'chol makom she'eina shemei ve'eina medalel. In general, the taich of chedesh means someone that cannot hear. But in Chachamim spoke about chedesh, it means of someone that cannot hear and cannot speak. Ha medaber ve'eina shemei. But if he could speak and he cannot hear, so he only has one issue, or he's shemei ve'eina medaber, or he can hear, he can listen, but he cannot speak. chayiv, he has a chiyuv of going up to the Beis Hamikdash. This is one. So according to what we said just now, someone that is a deaf mute, no chiyuv to go up to the Beis Hamikdash. Someone that is only one, either deaf or mute, has a chiyuv.
Rashi answered a post the shaila. How could you speak if you can't? He said,
He lost his hearing later.
yeah.
If you're born like that, normally you can't speak.
Right.
You can't
Right.
do what you don't have to. If you're
Right.
deaf, you can speak.
See, we'll see. Tosis later on mentions it also. Tosis mentions it later on as well in a very interesting concept. Okay, so Tanina laho, we learned it as well in a Blaisa. Tana Rabbanan Hamadaba ve'ena Shemaya. We learned a different way in a Blaisa. Hamadaba ve'ena Shemaya. Someone can speak but cannot hear. That in general is called a chedesh. Shemaya ve'ena Madaba. But if he hears and he cannot speak, the opposite. Zeu ilim. That is called the ilim. But the Mishnah says there, if they only have one issue, they're considered someone that's open, someone that's a pikech, someone that's a regular, neurotypical person, as we will call it today. He's a regular person. So when my why do we say that the medaber, that someone that speaks but cannot hear, is called a chedesh, and a shemeya ve'ena medaber ze ilaim? Why is someone that's called? We're just now trying to find out the name. Why is one that cannot hear called a chedesh and one that cannot speak called the ilaim? The chsiv, it says in the pasuk, va'ani, I am like a chedesh, loy eshma, like a chedesh that does not hear. So now chedesh we know is someone that cannot hear, a deaf person. Uke ilaim lo yiftach bi. And like a ilaim that cannot open up his mouth, which basically means that he is mute. So now chedesh is a deaf, ilaim is mute. The Eloi say, man, you don't have to bring it from a pasuk. We know chedesh in general means someone that's deaf. What does the word ilaim mean? He says ilaim is a Rosh Tevis. Like people would say, ishtekil, the aleph and the lamed of ishtekil of the ilaim is ishtekil. Ishtekil means it was taken away. Milule, his words. So the guy that his words were taken away is called an ilim. So ilim is the Rosh Tevis. But now we established over here that someone that is just deaf or someone that is just mute has a chiyuv to go to Beis Hamikdash. Someone that is both deaf and mute, no chiyuv to go to Beis Hamikdash. Why they're called this way? We have a pasuk or we have a saying of the people. The Mishnah said that we said medaber ve'ena shemeya, shemeya ve'ena medaber chayev. We just mentioned that someone has only one issue. He has a chiyuv to go to the Beis Hamikdash. He has a chiyuv of mitzvahs and medaber ve'ena shemeya. If someone has one of these issues, or shemeya ve'ena medaber, he either hears, he either doesn't hear or he doesn't speak. Potter, he's part of the mitzvahs. So Ravina said we have to add something here. We have to add something in this B'laisa. Every single person is chayav to go up to the Beis Hamikdash to see and to be seen in the ring of Karbanis. Uvesimcha, we mentioned last week, there's another Karban called Karban Simcha. Shalom Simcha, a Karban that you bring just to be rejoiceful. Chutz, Mecheresh, Hamedaber, ve'ena shemeya, someone that is able to speak but can't hear, or shemeya ve'ena medaber, he could hear but he can't speak. Such a person is potter from going to be seen or see in the Beis Hamikdash. He's potter from bringing the first korban. Even though he's potter from going out to Beis Hamikdash, chayev b'simcha, he has another chiyuv of being simcha that he still has. Someone that cannot hear and cannot speak. They are also part from even doing simcha. Because they are in general, the katan, the שוטה are part from all the mitzvahs in the Torah.
This is a Braisa explaining our Mishnah further.
So now we have the Mishnah like this. We have everyone has to go to Beis Hamikdash. We have the people, and when they go to Beis Hamikdash, they have to bring 3 karbanos. They have to bring a korban de'iyah. They have to be seen, be seen, a korban de'iyah. They have to bring a korban Chagigah, and they have to bring a korban simcha. They have to be, in general, they have to be joyful and happy. Now we have someone that is missing something. He can't hear, but he can speak, or he can't speak, but he can hear. They don't have a chiyuv to go to Beis Hamikdash and see nor be seen. We're going to see in a moment why. Where does he take that from? But they still have the chiyuv of simcha. A ched, a shayt of a cotton have absolutely no obligations. A woman has an obligation to be besimcha, but not to be Aliyah. So we're dividing the Mishnah in three different categories: a regular person, a chedesh that can speak, or someone that can hear. So someone that can hear but not speak, and woman is another category. And the next category would be chedesh shayt v'katan, someone that's completely deaf mute, a child, or a shaytim.
Why does the child have simcha, have mitzvahs?
You take a child to the Beis Hamikdash and you're walking there and you...
No, but it says
Maybe
That's til chinuch. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the concept. Yeah.
Exactly. So by the time he gets, he's really upset. Or
Yeah.
whatever, so he doesn't even want to be
You're
there.
not talking about a cotton number on it. You're talking about a cotton of 2-3-year-old.
Yeah, 2-3. Yeah. The moment you can walk and not tantrum on the way up, some people that's a little later age. So it doesn't. There's no age factor involved. Some kids it's older, some kids it's younger. So this is literally what it says. It says you can walk himself. What does it mean? The kid's not going to tantrum on the way up. Zakti Gemara weiter. Two lines in the bottom. Tanem and Achi, we learned in the Beis as well. Hakoychav B'riyah B'simcha. Everyone is mechuyev. Everyone has an obligation to go to the Beis Hamikdash, bring karbanos, and also be b'simcha. Chutz mecher shemadaber ve'ena shemeya, shemeya ve'ena medaber. Someone that can hear but not speak, or speak and not hear. Sheptu min aliyah. They have part from the first mitzvah. V'af b'shvotim min aliyah chayav b'simcha. He still has a chiyuv of being b'simcha, bring the karbanos of simcha. V'she'ena lo shemeya ve'lo medaber. Someone that cannot hear and not speak, or a שוטה and a katan p'tu min af min simcha. They are part of simcha because they're part of all the mitzvahs that it's brought down in the Torah. So now, again, finalize three categories: regular people, a chedesh but he could speak, or someone that can speak he can hear. And a woman is another category, and the rest of the people that don't have the chedesh, shayt v'katan, and all the other things that I mentioned in the Mishnah. Simple questions: why is simcha something that they are mechuyev? If you say that they are part of all the mitzvahs, why simcha mechuyev? It's part of the mitzvahs. Let simcha be taken off as well. Why is the apoton, the kolban of the concept of being simcha? Here you say he doesn't have to. Why by simcha do you say that he is mechuyav? So answers the Gemara. We see in two different places that it brings the word seeing. Just like in one place, seeing teaches us that this person is chayev or potter. The same thing also by us in Yontif. In Hakel it says the chsiv, and what does it say by Hakel? Every 8 years. Every year after the Shemitah. The chsiv Hakel as ha'am hanoshim metafish is very clearly you have to gather the nation, all the people, men, women, and children. Uksiv, what does it say there? The pasuk before. When do you do that? When you didn't come up to the Beis Hamikdash to be seen. When you didn't come up to be seen, that's when you have to do hakel. And by hakel we know that a chedesh that is completely deaf mute, or a little child or a שוטה does not have to go listen to the king reading the Torah. How do we know that? By the hakel, how do we know that they don't have the mitzvah of hakel? They have to be able to hear and they have to be able to learn. And as someone that's deaf and mute can't hear and he can't learn because he's mute, he can't speak, he can't learn. Okay, so here we see hakel, no mitzvah. Chedesh, a complete deaf mute, has absolutely no mitzvah of going up to hakel. Now we have a pasuk that says bevoy ledoyes. We say ledoyes. This is a gzera shava, two psukim, and they can mean that we can to combine the halachas of one and the other. Just like hakel, the chedesh, שוטה v'katan do not have a mitzvah of going up to the Beis Hamikdash and listen to the king reading. The same thing also by Yontif, a chedesh, שוטה v'katan, someone that's completely deaf mute, has no mitzvah of going to the Beis Hamikdash. So now the Gemara is going to go into a back and forth, a very interesting back and forth. Do we read it leman yilmedu or leman yilamedu? Yilmedu means learning. Yilamedu means teaching. Says the Gemara. The Gemara says, "V'tanya we learn the Brayso. Leman yishmu." What does leman yishmu mean? It means someone that has to be able to hear. Prat lemedaber v'neshmei. Someone that could speak, but he cannot hear. Such a person does not have to go hakel. Or leman yilmedu. Prat l'shmei v'nemedaber. This comes to exclude someone that knows how to hear. He could hear, and he can't speak. So now you said leman yilmedu means you can't learn. If you can't, the Torah is basically saying that if you can't speak, you can't learn. Leman yishmu, you have to be able to hear. Leman yilmedu, you have to be able to learn. The Gemara says if you can't speak, you can't learn. So the Gemara asks a question. Lemeim, do you want to say dechi loy mishtoye? Well, if you cannot speak, loy goma, you cannot learn. V'hano tre alimi. There were two mute people. They lived in the neighborhood of the Rebbe. They were the sons of the daughter, the grandchildren of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gud Goyda. And other people say that they were not the grandchildren of Bnei Yochanan, they were the Bnei Achte de Rabbi Yochanan, the nephews of Rabbi Yochanan. What happened to those people? The Chol Eimas, they were mute, they couldn't speak. The Chol Eimas, the Ayil Rebbe Beis Hamikdash, when Rebbe would go to shul to teach his students, Hava Aili, they would go to shul as well. V'yasvi Kamar, and they sat in front of him. Omenaydi b'dashaya, and they would shake their heads. You know, you have some people give speeches, and the guy says, yeah, Gemara and Gittin, yeah, I know. So they sat, and this is what everyone thought, that they're just shaking their head, that they don't understand what's going on. Not only did they shake their heads, they would move their lips. They would something. They couldn't speak, but they were able to move their lips. And Rabbi saw that they were sincere. They came on a daily basis. Whenever he was giving a shir, they came and sat. Rabbi asked mercy. Ve'itzu, they were healed. And now that they're healed and they can speak, ve'shtakach, they found out that they were learned people. Not stam learned people. Hilchasa, the new Mishnayos, Sifra, the new Midrashim on Vayikra, V'Sifri, the new Midrashim on Bamidbar and Dvarim, V'Chula Talmud, and they knew all the Talmud that was until then. They knew everything. They were huge Talmud Chacham. So now we see that even though they weren't able to speak, they were able to learn. So why do you say Leman Yilbuna means? Leman Yilbuna means someone that can't speak can't learn. In order to be Leman Yilbuna, you have to be able to speak. Who says that? Who says that in order to be able to learn, you have to be able to speak? You can learn without speaking. Even though we know it says that, we had it somewhere, I think, I don't know if it was Naim Yom. No, it wasn't Naim Yom. That when you learn, it is important for you, even when you learn for yourself, it's important for you to read the words loud. Because someone who reads... that was Rambam. Oh, thank you. It was Rambam. I knew it was a couple days ago. Yeah, so because when you see, I said the words loud and I forgot. The Rambam says if you said the words, you won't forget so fast. I forgot already.
No, it's just like if you look at the words, you don't say them.
So there's certain things.
You can't.
Yeah, so the kavanah.
If you don't say the words, you're not doing it.
Certain mitzvahs you have to have.
You have to actually say it.
You have to say it. But in any case, you have to speak. But it doesn't mean that if you don't speak, it doesn't mean you can't learn. So the Gemara asks the question. From a fact, there was a story of these people. They were mute, and they learned, and they found out later on how well they learned. Okay, so Mazutra. So Mazutra said.
Doesn't it say something about the way to wisdom is shtika?
Siag l'chochma shtika.
That's only if you're able to and you stay quiet. You can't talk because you must know chochma.
Yeah. Lo yabayshan lamit. You can't be embarrassed to learn. You have to ask questions. So you have to speak up. But Siag l'chochma shtika means other things. It's like you don't have to say everything that's on your mind. You know, you don't have to everything that goes through your head. Okay, anyway, so Mazuta answers like this. We don't read it Yilmedu. Yilmedu means learning. We read it Yelamedu, teaching. So Mazuta Korebe Leman Yelamedu. So now the pasuk reads like this. The Yidden go Hakel for two things. Leman Yishmu, they should be able to hear. Or Leman Yelamedu, they should be able to teach. To hear, you have to have open ears. Yelamedu, in order to teach, you have to be able to speak. So now we have hearing and speaking. That's Mazuta. Maseches says basically the pasuk there's an issue because we see for a fact that people that are mute could learn, so we're changing the pasuk. Rav Ashi says different. Rav Ashi says no, we don't have to come to the story to now change the pasuk. The pasuk itself doesn't make sense. Why does the pasuk not make sense? Because very simple. if someone can't hear, going back, someone can't hear forever. He was born deaf. If someone is born deaf, usually that person cannot speak. And if someone is born deaf and he cannot speak, he's never going to learn that this is how you read this is how you read that. So he's never going to be able to learn. So not hearing from birth means not being able to learn. The pasuk Leman Yishmu is enough to tell us that not only can you not hear, you cannot learn. So therefore, Leman Yilmud has to mean something else. It will be redundant to say Leman Yilmud means that you can't learn. For sure, Leman Yilamedu. You have, not because of the story, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. If you would say that it means that a person goes out to the Beis Hamikdash behakel in order to be able to learn, if he cannot read, he can't learn. If he cannot hear, again he can't learn. Is a high milaman yishmu nafka. This you can learn from man yishmu. The fact that you cannot hear, you cannot speak, it's the same thing. We were talking about teaching, that's a different thing. Hearing and learning, that's you'll be able to learn from man yishmu. If you cannot hear from the get-go, if you were deaf from when you were young, you cannot teach, you cannot learn.
You can't teach either.
No.
If he can't hear, how can he teach?
So here we're talking about someone. The Tosfos asked this question, and this is where we brought up someone that's deaf from before. So deaf. He was able to hear before. And now he became deaf. Eventually became deaf. So this explains we have to tweak it a little bit. It says that the Yidden have a mitzvah when they come to the Beis Hamikdash. At that moment, the king reads this whole title. The king reads the whole old psukim, and at that moment you have to be able to learn and teach about what? V'yodas Hashem, about fearing Hashem. A person, even though that he was able to hear in the past, and therefore he is able to speak, he cannot teach though. And that the pasuk comes to teach. Even though you were able to teach before, and you're able to speak, but if you cannot say the words, Lamani Lamedu comes to exclude that person, he doesn't have to go up. So there's a person that knows how to learn, he knows how to speak, he was able to listen. But now he cannot teach from what the king tells us this year. He can teach us from what the king told us last hakel, but not this hakel. So this hakel he has no chiyuv to go up, because the whole reason of going up to hakel to hear the king read is that this year, whatever the king tells me, I'm going to teach someone leman that to fear Hashem. And this year, from this year I cannot. I can teach from the years before, but not this year. So this year I have no chiyuv. So not basically going back to what we were saying, that someone that cannot teach, there's no mitzvah of going up to do hakel. Someone that cannot hear has no mitzvah going up hakel. And the Leman Yishmu includes someone that cannot speak. So for hakel we see no speaking, no hearing, and obviously also no teaching, no mitzvah of hakel. There's a gzera shava, the iyah, the teachers us the yantav also you have the same thing. That if you cannot hear or speak, you don't have a chiyuv of going up to the Beis Hamikdash.
We still never answered why they're chayiv in simcha.
No. Okay, so finish. Okay. Reb Tanachum said, before we even get there, the pasuk is reducing the hilchas of the iyah with learning Leman Yilmudu Leman Yishmu. There's no such pasuk about simcha. By simcha, it doesn't say Leman Yilmudu Leman Yishmu. So the pashtos, even before we go weiter, we'll see what this Gemara doesn't talk about it yet, but maybe later it speaks about it. But the pashtos, we must say that by simcha, it doesn't say an exclusion. Women are mechuyev b'simcha. All the other people, also most of them are mechuyev b'simcha. Again, a chedesh shayt and mekatan are not mechuyev b'simcha because they don't understand the concept. And again, today it's very hard to say that a chedesh doesn't understand the concept. But in any case, that's the so we know that going up to Beis Hamikdash for Korban Le'iyah, we are potter. Now the Gemara gets a little easier. 1 second. Amar Tanchum. Chedesh Baz Nachas. If someone is deaf only on one ear, potter in Aliyah, he's potter going up. Shenema be'ozneihem. It says they have to be ear. This is again a pasuk in Hakel, and then we say the Gzera Shav again. The Hakel, it says that he has to read the Torah be'ozneim in their ears, plural. So he has to be able to hear both ears. Why do you say be'ozneim goes in that they should be able to hear in both ears? V'hai be'ozneim. This pasuk be'ozneim. We use it for a different limud. Something else we learn out. Be'ozneim, the kulu soil, that all the Yidden have to be there. Not that each Yid is supposed to hear from both ears, but all the Yidden's ears have to hear it. It doesn't mean 2 ears. Again, Bozneim, they learn out that every Yid has to be present by Hakel, but not that have both ears. The Tosfos brings to mind a Shalom an interesting story, a Machlokes, not a story, Machlokes, when it says that you have to make by the Kahanim kosnois oil, you have to make not kosnois oil, you have to make them tase kosnois. So kosnois is the plural of a shirt of a kotoines. Kosnois is the plural lashon. So there's a machlokes whether each kohen has to have 2 shirts or each one only one. And kosnois is basically all these kahanim you have to make shirts. Not that each kohen should get shirts. All the kahanim should get shirts, which means each one get one. So the same concept here, but his name could either mean that all the Yidden's ears, but the plurality of it goes on the Yidden, not on the person, or that goes on a person, that both ears of the person have to hear. So Tanachum says, in the beginning it says his name goes on both ears. So the Gemara asks, no, it goes on all the ears of the Yidden, all the ears of the Yidden. So the Gemara, how do we learn that all the Yidden have to be there? We learn from a different pasuk. Mineget kol Yisrael nafke. It says over there in the pasuk that he has to read it before all the Yidden. Before the Yidden, now all the Yidden have to be here. So now ba'ozneim you can use for both ears. So the Gemara, mineget kol Yisrael, that's not good. If you would only use mineget kol Yisrael, hava mina. That basically it says in the pasuk that the king has to read the Torah in front of all the Yidden. Hava mina. I would think afagav de l'shami that the Yidden have to be there present. But they don't have to actually hear the king read. And Doisa says, what's an example of that? You have a Beis Hamikdash. You have 5 million Yidden showing up at the Beis Hamikdash. There was no amplifying system then. The guy in the back that never got, came late to 3 seconds and the doors were about to close, can't hear a word. He can't hear anything. He has to So how do we know that such a person has to actually hear the words of the king? And not just be there present. Mineget kol Yisrael means that the Yidden have to be present. They don't have to hear the words. How do we know they actually have to hear? From Mazneim again. If you would only say before the Yidden, the Yidden could be there, but they don't have to hear. Therefore the pasuk wrote Be'ez name that the Yidden actually have to hear. And again, means they have to hear. And again, we don't have any proof, any pasuk teaching us that the person has to be able to hear with both ears. And for the Gemara, the fact that he didn't actually have to hear, milaman yishmu nafke. Again, from the pasuk man yishmu, that they have to hear. And Ozneim teaches us both ears. So Ozneim is both ears. Laman yishmu teaches us they actually have to hear. Mineget kol Yisrael is in front of the Yidden. Now we're going to say a bunch of sayings of Tanachum. The next one still has to do with what our Gemara. The next one after that is just a general saying of a Tanachum.
So when the king read, not everybody heard?
Possible. But everyone had to push. Everyone to... it's amazing things in the ceremony. Yeah. It was probably one of the nisim that the people saw in Beis Hamikdash that they saw. They put a bima, they made him higher, and that they must have heard. So the Gemara continues. If someone is limping, is lame on one foot, he does not have to go to Beis Hamikdash. Shenemar shalish regolim. It's called regel. It's called a yontif, but it's also called regel. Raglayim as feet. He has to have both feet. Raglayim, both feet. The same question. Raglayim is used for something else. Raglayim is coming to teach us Prat lebali kabin. It's coming to exclude someone that has legs, but the legs are artificial. They're not his biological legs. Someone that has a prosthetic does not. So if you would just say raglayim, if you would say just he has to have legs, then such a person would have to go. So the Torah comes to tell you raglayim has to have his own feet. Prat lebali kabin. And for the Gemara, no. The fact to exclude someone that has artificial legs, hahu mipe'amim nafka. It says in a pasuk shalosh regalim bashana, and another pasuk in Shmois it says shalosh pe'amim bashana. It says shalosh regalim shalosh pe'amim. Pe'amim is also means legs, and the Gemara is going to say why it means legs. And the regalim means legs. One is going to be used that he needs two legs, and one is going to be used that he needs his own legs. Not artificial legs, not the prosthetics. The Tanya will learn the Ablaisa Pa'amim. It says in Pasuk Pa'amim. Ein Pa'amim el Raglayim. Pa'amim means legs, feet. The Chenoim it says in Pasuk. How do you read this? Timeseno. Regel Ragli Oni Pa'amidam. This is a Pasuk in the Shaya that speaks about the Geula. It's really the Eibishter coming back to the Shalayim, and the Eibishter will lower down all the cities that they made himself higher than the Shalayim, higher than Eden. The Eibishter is going to put them down, and it says that till Mesena they will be shredded upon, they will be stepped on with their feet. Regel Ragli Ani, the feet of the poor, and the Pamedalim, and the steps of the needy are the ones that are going to be stepping on the cities of the goyim of whatever it was. So we see that pa'amim can also be called feet. So now pa'amim is called feet. It means your own feet, not artificial legs. And aglayim means two, not and you have to have two, not only one. Ve'oim, it says another pasuk. Ma'yafu pa'amayich bana'olim. It says a pasuk shashim. How beautiful are your feet bana'olim in your shoes or sandals. Bas Nadiv, the daughter of a Nadiv, the daughter of a prince. Okay, so here we finish this Gemara that we see that you have to have two legs, and we learn this from Shalosh Golem, and you have to have your own legs, and we learn this from Pamim. Now we're going to go into a little bit of Agadata to the end of the page. It's very now we mentioned Tanachum, the Chumash, so we're going to say a few things. So I mentioned one of the things on the text. I said that a gated tzedek, a convert, has certain things that better than Yidden. What are the things? So Taisa says on the side before we mentioned about the Evet, a slave, someone that's a half slave, half this. It says that one of the options the Gemara brings, the Taisa brings. Look, we have a guy that was a slave, and he was released, and now he's a half slave and half freed person, and he can't do anything. What should he do? Between the options that Tosfos gives, one of the options is let him sell himself as a slave. Let the half part that he's freed, let him sell himself like an Eved Ivdi, and now he is a complete slave. Two ends, and now he can marry Shifcha. There's a few problems with that. Number one is that now that he was a Yid, he has to have Yiddish kids, and by marrying a shifcha, you're not going to have Yiddish kids. You're going to have kids that belong to the master. That's one problem. The bigger problem is it says that the Ger Tzedek, now that he became a half-free person, he's considered a convert. He's considered a Ger Tzedek. A convert cannot be sold as an Eved Ivdi. Why? So you can think maybe why does someone get to be sold? Why is someone sold as a slave? Yeah. When someone steals, doesn't have money, or he doesn't have money, so he sells himself. The Torah had a lot of mercy, rachmanas, on a ger. It said we have to be. It says so many mitzvahs. You have to love the ger, and all these mitzvahs. The Torah actually went, around to make sure that a ger, a convert, is being taken care of. One of the things it says by a Evet Ivdi is that after 7 years he's supposed to go out. He's supposed to go back to himself. If he wants to stay, he has to get his ear pierced, and then he stays till Yovel. And then v'shaftem isha l'chuzazeh, everyone will return to their property. V'isha mishpachta teshuv, and every person returns to his family. He says a ger does not have a family. you're going to take a convert that sacrificed so much in his life to give up so many things, and then you're going to sell him as a slave, and he is not even going to have a family to return to. Torah says no. So that's one of the things that Torah says here. The Gemara here is going to speak about converts. I'll see what the Gemara says. The Gemara mentioned the last thing, that Bas Nadiv, the daughter of a prince. Who is this prince? The last pasuk that the Gemara mentioned about legs being called Pa'amim, it says that how beautiful are the legs, are your feet in your shoes, daughter of prince. Now, Bas Nadiv, daughter of princes. Who is this prince? What is it that it says, how beautiful are your legs, Bana'olim, in your shoes, Bas Nadiv? So the Gemara says like this: how beautiful are the legs, the feet of the Yidden, Aliyah Leregel, at the moment they go up to the Beis Hamikdash during the 3 Yom Tovim. Bas Nadiv, which Yidden we're talking about? Bita shel Avraham Avinu, the kids that are the sons and daughters of Avraham Avinu. Shenikra Nadiv, he is called a prince. Why is Avraham Avinu called a prince? Shenemar, it says in Pasuk, Nedivei Amim Nesafu, the princes of the nations gathered. Who are the princes of the nations? Am, Elekei Avram, the nation that accepted upon himself the God of Avram. Well, asks the question: is this only Avram's God? It's also Yitzchak and Yaakov's God. Fed the Gemara, Elekei Avram, Elekei Yitzchak and Yaakov, and not the God of Yitzchak and Yaakov. No, was ever the Gemara, Elekei Avram, Shoyat Chila Legeidim. Nedivei Am Nesafu, the princes of the nations gather. Who are we talking about? We're talking about all the Gedim, all the converts. They gather, they go up to the Beis Hamikdash, and everyone else after Avraham Avinu that went up is considered a son of Gedim. We're all sons of converts because Avraham Avinu was the first convert. Bas Nadiv means the daughter of a prince of Avram, because Avram is the first one that went against his family, he sacrificed so much. That's why he's called a prince. So we don't call Yitzchak and Yaakov that were born into it a prince, and we don't call their offspring a prince. We call the converts, the Gedim, them we call princes. The Divei Ami means the converts that gather to go up to Shalim. They are the ones that are called princes. And the pasuk says, how beautiful are the legs of the people, of the converts that go up to the Shalim. Okay, Amar Abkana. So Abkana said, Darash Abnasim Abinyumi Mishum Abtanchem. Abnasim said in the name of Abtanchem, Maidich Siva Boyek B'mayim, a famous Rashi. We have that when the brothers threw Yosef down the pit, they looked down the pit, and Reuven said, very famous Reuven said, throw him into the pit, and they threw him in the pit, and says, Aboydek, and remind that the pit is empty, it doesn't have water. Why is it a double lashon? Why does it say it's empty and it doesn't have water? So this is come to teach you mayim but it has nechoshim and akrabim. To finish off with a story, two stories. So number one is a story from Shoinim. There's a famous question. What did Reuven's idea help? How did his idea help? Reuven told his brothers throw him into the pit, and they threw him in a pit with scorpions and snakes. How does that help? So Reuven wanted to save him. How did that save him? He actually almost certainly brought him to death by throwing him to the pit. So the simple answer is there was a Lishan, I forgot his name, the Lishan that answered that the pasuk says Tashlecher laboyazeh. Reuven told his brothers, throw him into this pit. He checked out the pit. The pit was okay. No water, no scorpions, no snakes, no danger. This pit. And they threw him they threw him into a general pit. So they say that night, this Lishan had a dream. The Uvein showed himself in a dream, and he said, thank you. For years this question was around, and no one understood the answer. And you came and he saved my sin. That's one. The other story we're going to have to take off camera.